What happens when a rebellious homeowner turns her driveway into a bustling glamping retreat, challenging the iron grip of a tyrannical HOA president? Sometimes, laughter is the best resistance. The tranquility of Sunday morning was shattered by the sound of stilettos clicking menacingly down the sidewalk, announcing the approach of none other than Karen Thorne. Clad in her usual armor of tailored blouse and pencil skirt, she resembled a stern schoolmarm on a mission to enforce every last infraction in a guide to suburban living. I took a deep breath, reminded myself that I was wearing my favorite graphic tee. "I can't adult today," it proclaimed in cheerful, bold letters. There was something almost comical about the juxtaposition of her seriousness and my casual rebellion. Armed with a clipboard like a knight with a sword, Karen informed me with all the gravitas of a Supreme Court judge that my driveway was now considered community property. Loretta's coffee mug clinked in solidarity next to me as I fought the urge to burst into laughter. But Karen's furrowed brow made me think otherwise. She wouldn't appreciate the hilarity of my plight at all. As I watched her storm toward her car, a classic HOA mobile if I ever saw one, complete with "keep off my grass" bumper stickers, I pondered my next move. Could she really claim my driveway as communal? Was this some sort of twisted HOA real estate deal that I had missed while binge-watching reality TV? The indignation boiled in my veins, mixing beautifully with the caffeine coursing through my bloodstream. If they think they can take my driveway, then maybe they should pay for its use. Or even better, I smirked, allowing the light bulb to flood through my mind, I could turn it into a cozy little campsite. Because if there's one thing I knew, it was that the most effective way to fight absurdity was with even more absurdity. Armed with my grand scheme, I texted Luis, my genial neighbor, who had a penchant for BBQing and a laugh that was contagious enough to propel anyone's spirits sky high. "Let's turn my driveway into a glamping site," I typed, half laughing, half terrified at the thought of what I was suggesting. To my surprise, he replied almost instantly, "Are we talking fairy lights and a fire pit? Count me in." We concocted a Pinterest-worthy plan that involved twinkling lights, an inflatable hot tub, and the pièce de résistance, a sign that read, "Jamie's Cozy Campsite, $50 a night." I grinned slyly, imagining the look on Karen's face when she caught wind of my newfound entrepreneurial spirit. The next morning, I donned my most outrageous Hawaiian shirt, bright blue with flamingos, naturally, and set about transforming my driveway into the ultimate relaxation retreat. Luis arrived with his infamous BBQ chicken and a portable speaker. We blasted tropical tunes, crafted witty signs that promised an escape from HOA oppression, and filled the driveway with faux plants and lounge chairs that could only be described as comically oversized. With every piece of decor, I felt a surge of empowerment course through me. I imagined the HOA board sweating bullets at the thought of my budding glamping business. Scenes of affluent neighbors awkwardly stopping by to check out the competition sent me into fountains of laughter as I recounted the tale to Luis, who doubled over with me. Then came the first clients, geriatric snowbirds from Florida, who had stumbled into our own slice of paradise. They marveled at my makeshift oasis, chuckling heartily over my cheeky little Airbnb listing. "Now this is what I call community spirit," the wife exclaimed, leaning against the inflatable hot tub, which was only slightly wavering under her presence. I couldn't help but feel a rush of triumph against my draconian nemesis. Meanwhile, from across the street, Karen's expression morphed from disbelief to indignation as she glared at her clipboard, probably frantically typing a letter to the top HOA officials about my outrageous encroachment on communal property rights. There was something deeply satisfying about flipping the tables on my uptight homeowners association. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, illuminating my driveway glamping site with a soft golden hue, I felt invincible. I envisioned Karen marching up to confront me, her stern lips pursed tighter than a sealed jar of pickles. But before she could gather her storm clouds, our driveway was becoming a secret talking point among neighbors. "You should have seen Karen's face when she saw the sign yesterday," Luis cackled, shoveling down BBQ chicken between fits of laughter as we toasted sodas to our little rebellion. I kicked back in my lounge chair, sipping on a piña colada, which might have been virgin but packed a punch of glee that was downright intoxicating. After all, nothing says community quite like a well-decorated driveway that takes a jab at the overreaching HOA power. Just then, as if summoned by my rebellious spirit, I spotted Karen storming towards me through the gathering dusk like a heroic detective unmasking a criminal. I held her gaze, daring her to deliver a speech for the ages. What would her response be to my glamorous ditching of HOA rules in favor of creativity and absolute ridiculousness? Possibly she would flounder on the brink of confrontation, realizing that it was hard to find a law against the joyous clinking of glasses on a well-deserved weekend. Or perhaps, just perhaps, she would be forced to confront the glaring truth that in this battle of the absurd, the gaudy had reigned supreme. What would Karen do next? The suspense wrapped around my driveway like the strands of glittering fairy lights we had strung up just hours earlier. With the late afternoon sun casting a warm glow on my little rogue glamping site, I reclined on my plush lounger, daring the universe, or more specifically, Karen, to come at me. The cacophony of laughter from my unexpected guests, the elderly snowbirds, created an almost festive atmosphere. Meanwhile, a sense of victory surged through me, buoyed by the oddity of my current situation. I could just picture the HOA board members tucked away in their stuffy meeting rooms, clutching their clipboards in despair. I had taken their drab, rule-ridden community and transformed it into a whimsical paradise of overpriced tents and somewhat questionable inflatable furniture. Today, for the first time, joy was the currency of rebellion. Just as I took a sip of my piña colada, a burst of laughter erupted from the snowbirds when they discovered the inflatable hot tub was more of a buoyant flotation device than an actual spa experience. "This really is luxury camping," the husband yelled, his voice echoing against the suburban backdrop like a battle cry. I felt the playful rebuke from Karen stomp into my cozy little narrative, looming over the horizon. She was marching like a storm cloud, fierce and intimidating. But let me tell you, I would have given anything to see her face when she realized that she was coming to confront not just my trivial defiance, but also a festive gathering of seemingly harmless old folks simply enjoying life. She fired daggers from her narrowed eyes, her anger tangible enough to ignite a campfire, and I couldn't help but let out a silent chuckle. Karen cleared her throat, the noise mimicking a car engine revving with a need for attention. Just as she was about to unleash her fury upon us, I decided it was my moment to shine. I wheeled around and called out, "Hey Karen, care to join us for a round of BBQ chicken? It's expertly crafted, just like your HOA bylaws." The snowbirds erupted in giggles, and for a second, I basked in the deliciousness of my own audacity. But there she stood, jaw clenched and arms crossed, unamused. Perhaps I should drop the sarcasm. But honestly, what fun would that be? After all, it wasn't every day you could make the stern face of an HOA president an unwilling participant in absurdity. "This is community property, don't you realize?" She shot back, her voice sharp enough to slice through our jovial atmosphere. Dramatically, I took a deep breath and retorted, "Is it really community property if it's being used in a way no one expected? I mean, come on, Karen. When was the last time you threw a party?" The flicker of surprise in her eyes fueled my adrenaline rush. I might as well have dangled a piece of chocolate in front of a dieter, for piquing her interest was a feat never before accomplished in our little war. I gestured towards the impossibly cheerful surroundings, where the sun was blushing at the fun being had. "How about you crack a smile or even join the festivities? I'm accepting 50 cash for overnight stays, or you can barter with some HOA rules." They seemed to be going out of style anyway. The gleeful responses from the snowbirds only fueled my glibness, and I could see water beginning to re-enter that stern stone facade of hers. Suddenly her expression flickered, a tightly wound spring that someone hesitantly started to unwind. Although the tension still hung in the air like a thick fog that refused to lift, an awkward sort of realization appeared to break through. You can't just keep having people camp out here. she said, though her voice now lacked its usual bite. As if on cue, a rogue dog barked in the background, adding to the absurdity of the moment. "Aren't you worried about lewd behavior at night?" she added, her brows knitting slightly, as though questioning the propriety of my little enclave. Finally, a chance to redeem my wild ideas over practical HOA ordering. "Come on, Karen," I pretended to plead. "If anything, our newfound night watch is enhancing the quality of community policing. Think of the film pitch it could inspire. Voyeur in suburbia. What's your cut?" I couldn't resist. Before she could respond, one of the snowbirds suddenly pulled out a pair of glow sticks from the cooler next to the lounge. "Let's do a dance," she chirped, exuberantly waving them in punishment of Karen's stringent nature. It was in that very moment, adorned with shimmering disaster, that I realized I might have just made the town's very own HOA president the reluctant star of a disco dance-off. The glint in my eye matched the glow in their hands, and as Karen spluttered, a mix of outrage and confusion gracing her thoroughly unmoving features, I roared with laughter. "Why not make it a talent show? First prize is planning committee approval. Second prize? Illustrious Craigslist, listings in the HOA yellow pages. Who would have thought that an event designed for relaxation would morph into a stage for a showdown between community authorities and a gaggle of overzealous retirees?" As the night rolled on, with twinkling lights above us and laughter thick in the air, I felt emboldened, the previous afternoon's ordeal fading into a dim memory. I was winning. Our creative rebellion had become a carnival. Yes, I was poking the alligator with a stick, but if Karen didn't pack up her sternness, I might just manage to coax a smile from her rigid lips before this was through. With Luis grinning and the snowbirds transforming into full-throated crooners, I leaned back and watched the improbable unfold before my very eyes. Karen danced, albeit begrudgingly, as neighbors slipped out of their homes to witness the unexpected hilarity. What if, through all this madness, I had discovered a path to peaceful coexistence amidst an HOA's iron grip? Much to ponder as the night continued on, each flickering light a beacon of my strangely triumphant fight against the absurdity of division. As the night unfolded, the spinning glow sticks began to create a surreal aura of festivity, transforming my driveway into a veritable circus of unexpected joy. Karen, caught in the whirlpool of laughter and boisterous karaoke performances from the snowbirds, shifted from her rigid stance to a reluctant one, bobbing her head in time to an off-key rendition of Sweet Caroline. It was a bizarre sight, witnessing the epitome of HOA authority, a woman who had spent years enforcing beige carpet norms and mulching requirements, spontaneously swaying alongside a gaggle of retired revelers. I laughed inwardly, aware that I was orchestrating a spectacle quite unlike any annual neighborhood meeting she'd ever presided over. Who needed a rulebook when you had a karaoke machine to redefine community engagement? Luis, with his usual laid-back demeanor, took it upon himself to host an impromptu Best Campfire Story contest, much to the amusement of my ever-growing audience. "I'll tell you a tale so frightfully boring, you'll wonder why you ever left your plush comfort of your living rooms," he proclaimed with exaggerated drama, eliciting hoots and hollers from the near campfire crowd. Even Karen couldn't suppress the tiny smile threatening to break through her stern facade, though I could tell she was still battling inner demons of propriety. Just when Luis wrapped up his enthralling anecdote about an HOA dispute gone wrong, who would have thought arguing about lawn flamingo statutes could spark drama, the crowd erupted into applause. "A crowd pleaser, that one," I laughed, my heart swelling with the shared joy of defiance and ridiculousness. The atmosphere thickened with camaraderie as the night deepened, illuminated by random bursts of laughter and goofy dance moves. I had commandeered my driveway, commandeered community interaction. The more Karen glared with faux indignation, the more animated my snowbird friends became, relentlessly egging her on as they launched into an enthusiastic line dance. "Let's show her how we roll over here," a particularly spry woman shouted, unexpectedly pulling Karen into the mix. Was I witnessing the fall of an HOA tyrant by the hands of 80s dance moves? Yes, indeed. "Move aside, Karen, you're too stiff for this," aptly called out another retiree. And with that challenge, my tension began to evaporate, replaced by an intoxicating sense of victory. And just when things seemed to hit a peak of absurdity, I noticed the flicker of a spotlight swing towards us. A neighbor from down the street, armed with an old camcorder and an insatiable desire to document the spectacle, had decided to film our glorious splendor. "I'll send this to the local news," he hollered with delight, jubilantly positioning himself to capture every last exaggerated gyration and Karen's increasingly bewildered expression. "Can you believe this? We might actually be at risk of starting a new neighborhood trend," I teased to the crowd, who roared with laughter, Karen's increasingly confused expressions adding another layer of comedic relief. Somewhere deep down, I knew I should feel bad for Karen, but the sheer humor of her predicament overshadowed any sense of pity. After all, it was hard to take authority seriously while being dragged unwillingly into the world of spontaneous choreography. Just then, the party reached a climax as the nature of our festivities drew attention from across the street. In the dim glow of our makeshift campsite, I spotted some of the staunchest supporters of the HOA, the infamous neatniks, lurking behind their perfectly manicured hedges. Their lips pursed in unison, probably trying to comprehend how a neighborhood could devolve into a raucous campout on a mere driveway. Their shock registered as they drifted closer, accounting for Karen's unlikely fall into absurdity. With wide grins, my snowbird friends giggled nervously. Surely they had never anticipated stirring such excitement on a suburban street. The moment I caught their twinkling eyes, I seized the opportunity. "Hey, neatniks, would you like to join? We have plenty of glow sticks and good campfire stories. I assure you, the HOA does not approve of this," one of them screeched, attempting to regain authority. But their feeble protest was merely swallowed by the roaring laughter emanating from my crowd, now fully invested in my drive and campout shenanigans. Suddenly, Karen stepped up, emboldened by the raucous crowd surrounding her. "If you are here to enforce the bylaws, well, you should have seen the spirit of community growing tonight. I'm afraid we'll have to include it in the next HOA meeting. These folks are simply lovely." The mocking chuckles erupted into a full-blown halftime show, and Karen's words, punctuated by a half-hearted smile, added an unanticipated twist. Could it be? Had I inadvertently nudged her towards growth, challenging her reign just moments before? And thus, with my rebellious spirit and an army of enthusiastic retirees rallying behind me, I reveled in this bizarre yet liberating takeover of my own driveway. Each moment stretching into the next, I felt the delightful thrill of victory, a triumph of community over corporate-like control, and all courtesy of a simple HOA disagreement. But in that moment, as the glow of the night twinkled like a banner of resilience overhead, I pondered what my next move could be. If camaraderie and creativity could turn an oppressive HOA into a stage for communal fun, might I just have stumbled upon a blueprint for launching a neighborhood revolution? With that tantalizing thought lingering in the air, I couldn't help but chuckle. What whimsical future could lie ahead for this driveway? As the twilight hues faded into the comfort of a star-studded blanket, I reveled in the absurdity of the evening. There I was, a renegade entrepreneur of my own driveway, hosting a campout that seemed to challenge the very essence of suburban life. The laughter and light-hearted revelry outweighed the disdain of the neatniks, who remained stiff in their pristine clutches of conformity. Meanwhile, my snowbird friends, now fully converted into followers of the Driveway Liberation Front, launched into a spontaneous rendition of Kumbaya. The lyrics, somewhat slurred and peppered with the occasional incorrect note, felt more like an anthem of defiance than a campfire song. I couldn't help but think, had I unlocked a hidden side to my neighbors, or were they merely captivated by the eccentricity of the night? Enter Karen, the ever-watchful overseer of HOA propriety, valiantly trying to restore order, while simultaneously embodying the role of reluctant partygoer, most notably through her half-hearted attempts to loosen her rigid demeanor. On one end, she was caught in my biting parody of community spirit. On the other, the shuffling retirees were distinctly quicker and more enthusiastic with each sway and twirl. "This is a breach of the HOA's noise ordinances," she shouted, her voice wavering amid a chorus of giggles, seemingly forgetting the ruling about fun. "But what is fun, my dear Karen?" I chimed in. giving her a mocking salute. "I suggest you join in before paperwork becomes the highlight of your week." The way her jaw tightened and her eyes flared momentarily reassured me that I was winning. Fed by the enthusiasm brewing in that chaos, I caught glimpses of neighbors I had never spoken to before blossoming as they shared their favorite campfire stories around the feeble glow of a few cheap lanterns. Luis picked up a guitar, where he even kept one hidden among his backyard tools. I had no idea, and launched into a rendition of the most absurd campfire misadventures. Between stories about questionable s'more techniques that ended up resembling molten lava and shady raccoon interactions, the laughter became infectious, a collective agreement that whatever the HOA dictated about appropriateness had long evaporated. I marveled at how a simple mix of rebellion and folly could forge connections in a once quiet neighborhood. Who knew that behind the beige curtains, dreams of campfires danced in our hearts? As the evening rolled on, I felt an exhilarating transformation occur. Sparks of camaraderie ignited like fireworks. What started as my little petty rebellion against Karen's suffocating authority had morphed into a radical shift in our community dynamics. Even the neatniks, struggling to maintain their frowns while peeking between their meticulously clipped hedges, couldn't help but crack a smile as they witnessed the communal joy erupting from the depths of my driveway. Karen stood embattled yet mesmerized, wrestling between traditionalist fervor and the undeniable allure of shared laughter that seems to remove the stringent aura she wore like a chastity belt. Maybe, just maybe, she too could recall a time when fun was present in her life. But as poetic as this moment seemed, the specter of HOA protocols loomed large. Karen, defiant, swept a hand across her face, eyebrows knitting as if she were concocting an elaborate plan to reestablish dominance. "You may find pleasure in chaos, Jamie, but this isn't what community is meant to uphold," she hollered, her authority waning against waves of laughter. Even the retirees shot back a chorus of, "Who made that rule?" and "Does joy not count?" She stumbled on the battlefield of her own making, trapped between the sheer absurdity I had introduced and the rebellion of the guests who had taken her down a peg. Each cheer from my makeshift camp rumbling through our street rang with the intoxicating sound of solidarity. And yet, with the evening spiraling into a frolicsome bliss, all eyes turned to the quirkiest distraction of all, an idea igniting deep within me. What if this spontaneous driveway gathering wasn't just a one-off affair? My rebellious spirit soared at the dragon of inspiration I had managed to waken. "Join me, everyone," I called out, the firelight dancing in my eyes. "Let's turn our driveway rebellion into a community tradition. Who's in for driveway campouts once a month?" I was met not with hesitation or confusion, but with raucous applause and cheers, as if I had just proposed the grandest of adventures. Oh sure, poor Karen, stuck in her tailspin of losing her HOA grip, now faced the prospect of a community that just might embrace this joyous transcendence. As the laughter continued to ring out under the shimmering stars, I felt the weight of the world lift from my shoulders and the hope of community replace it. The absurdity of the evening had morphed into a profound realization. The real battle against the forces of regulation was not simply about what belonged to me or enforcing bylaws, but engaged in the pursuit of joy and connection amongst neighbors. With my snowbird friends swelling with excitement, I turned towards Karen, who stood at the periphery, shocked and somewhat bewildered. "So, what do you say, Karen?" I sowed the seed of goodwill for the first time amidst our chaotic gathering. "Care to join us for the next driveway campout? Or should we find you a karaoke machine too?" Clenching her fists tightly against what must have felt like imminent doom, Karen's face transformed, wavering between terror and reluctant acceptance. She stammered, her dignity fumbling under the weight of community rebellion. Maybe she'd been right all along. Communities thrive on shared experiences, and it was in these colorful fringe moments when humanity blossomed. But would it take a few more ridiculous camping nights to break through her stern facade? I dared to dream as we clinked soda cans and let the echoes of warmth spiral into the night sky. What could possibly unfold now? Just as I savored the moment with my newfound comrades, Karen's quizzical expression reminded me of a deer caught in headlights. A mixture of disbelief and revelation flashed across her face. Driveway campouts? Once a month, she repeated, as if the words themselves were too complex for her tightly wound mind. It was a scene right out of a sitcom, where the villain suddenly finds herself solving the very problem she created. I could almost hear the scene transition music playing while the camera zoomed in on her face. My mental gears were turning at high speed, spinning my plan into a delightful ski slope of community-centric chaos, and I couldn't resist adding fuel to the fire. Look at us, Karen. We've created this haven of joy and spirit that just screams, "Come together," complete with campfire songs you can't resist. Luis, my easygoing neighbor, couldn't help but interject. Maybe it's time to rewrite those boring bylaws. O como un nuevo capítulo. What about a rule about joy? Right, Karen? He nudged her playfully, and I swear I saw a flicker of the tiniest smirk threading to escape her tightly constructed facade. Was it warmth? Cohesion? The scent of burnt marshmallows wafting through the air was intoxicating enough to soften even the toughest hearts. I was all for dismantling the fortress of HOA tyranny with the most ludicrous idea imaginable. A campfire with s'mores that resembled something out of a horror movie, but which had thoroughly charmed the pants off my whole street. Could I really pull this off? Were driveway campouts the pathway to dismantling Karen's iron grip on our lives? Meanwhile, the ambiance continued its magical transformation. Flame-lit faces were aglow with excitement, and even Karen's shadow started to lose its ominous air. Just when I thought destiny couldn't get any better, a couple of families arrived with acoustic guitars, blooming within the laughter and smoke like wildflowers. The musical interlude erupted with cheerful tunes, and my driveway became a mini festival that could make any neighborhood pool party feel jealous. I could see it now. It was a picture-perfect moment as retirees waved their hands to the beat, with my driveway full of singing, clapping, and those now infamous poorly constructed s'mores just waiting to be devoured. In that swirl of joy, I caught Karen's eye, a nagging hope flitting across her brow. But then I started thinking, surely I had pushed the envelope far enough to earn her next move? And as if on cue, Karen suddenly found her voice, raising it above the merry chaos. I demand to speak with Airbnb. This is a blatant violation of zoning laws. It was as if she were plucking a guitar string tuned to the wrong pitch. Instinctively, her proclamation reignited the raucous laughter around us, like fireworks shooting through the sky in response to her futile threat. I could barely hold in my glee. After all, she was trying to flood the Airbnb corporation with complaints. Something as downright ludicrous as asking the sun to stop shining because she couldn't control my newfound success. Wasn't chaos the very spirit of life? Did she truly believe she could douse this newfound joy simply by sending a few emails from her mahogany desk? Luis, never one to lose an opportunity for a good laugh, leaned over to me with a wink. It seems Karen needs some major lessons on the power of community spirit. Let me translate for her, he declared dramatically. Karen, friend, your complaints are about as effective as bringing soggy bread to a barbecue. Laughter rippled through our makeshift campsite like waves upon the shore. I couldn't help but imagine Karen shoving her way through corporate ticketing lines, pleading for sanity, while the customer service reps stared at her with a mixture of pity and bemusement. Would they treat her righteous indignation with the seriousness it deserved, or would they send her off with a courtly response signifying their indifference? There was something deliciously satisfying about the whole situation. Poor, desperate Karen, battling institutions while her neighbors chuckled and toasted marshmallows in my driveway. But just when I believed our victory was assured, the evening took another twist. In the middle of our glamping spree, I heard the unmistakable sound of sirens, loud and echoing. My heart plummeted, and I whipped my head towards the noise, just in time to see a police cruiser pull into our street, lights flashing. I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment and prepared for the worst. Had my driveway gained such notoriety that even the police were called for the audacity of joy? But something deep within me rebelled against the looming anxiety. Maybe they were simply enchanted by our campsite too. As if sensing my moment of panic, Luis burst out. a chuckle mixing with excitement. "Don't sweat it, Jamie. They're probably here to join the campout." To my surprise, the officers climbed out and approached slowly, their demeanor betraying neither suspicion nor skepticism. One of the officers, Officer Jenny, I quickly learned, grinned widely. "You're not causing trouble here, are you? We just heard some celebrations and thought we'd come check it out." The sudden warmth of camaraderie infused the atmosphere, and my heart soared as I threw caution to the wind. This was it. This was the grand culmination of my driveway rebellion, a night filled with unexpected guests, new connections, endless laughter, and an opportunity for unity. Would I win over Karen? Perhaps not yet, but I sure had transformed the vibes of our HOA, and if tonight was anything to judge by, there was no telling how far we could go. "Join us," I shouted, throwing my arms wide, welcoming them into the now welcoming embrace of my driveway glamping kingdom. Would this night culminate in friendships that bound us together in both laughter and defiance? Perhaps the best was yet to come. The atmosphere crackled with excitement as I watched the officers mingle with my neighbors, embracing warmth and laughter like old friends. My heart was a drum, pounding to the rhythm of camaraderie while I clutched a half-eaten s'more, reveling in the unexpected twist that had turned an HOA-induced dread into a full-blown festive celebration. Officer Jenny, the one who had embraced my invitation like a taco truck to a hungry crowd, plopped down on a makeshift seat fashioned from a cooler. "Well, this is all pretty ingenious," she said, her grin wide as she inspected the added sparkle of my driveway turned campsite. Who knew the best parties could come from a rebellious spat with the HOA? The irony of a police officer admiring my blatant defiance was the cherry on top of my whipped cream chaos, a fitting medal for this victory in spirit over formality. As curiosity turned to delight, I could see Karen cornered like a rabbit in a gopher hole, her carefully constructed frown cracking ever so slightly. She practically glared through her double-layered faux pearl sunglasses, those bastions of no-nonsense authority designed to shield her from the sheer audacity of laughter around her. First, it was the taco truck stealing the show. Now it was law enforcement scooping onto the scene like a surprise ending in a plot twist. The inflatable flamingo in my driveway was starting to look more like the patron saint of rebellion, as it was cuddled up next to a kid in a Hawaiian shirt, unknowingly flipping the narrative of our HOA. Karen's disdain would morph from outright anger into bewildered confusion, and I drank deeply from the cup of victory as I imagined her internal monologue swirling in helpless frustration. Just when I thought things couldn't get better, fate decided to deliver the most delicious slice of karma. In a true show of dramatic irony, while rallying against the rogue camaraderie unfolding before her eyes, Karen turned to face the crowd, brandishing one of those pamphlets she so lovingly crafted to denounce my driveway escapades. This, she began with an important lift of her chin that felt, quite frankly, desperate. "This is exactly why we need stricter regulations to uphold the sanctity of our community." But as she tried to elevate herself above the merry chaos, a gust of wind swirled through, like nature's way of whispering sweet nothings to poor old Karen. The pamphlet, flapping defiantly like the tail of a dog eager to play, ripped from her grasp and sent that entire display of HOA propaganda sailing into the air. Laughter erupted like fireworks at a summer festival, forcing the onlookers into a frenzy of joy. Even the police officers chuckled, shaking their heads in disbelief, as Karen's seriousness fell flat against the backdrop of joviality. "Who's going to stop this disturbance of joy?" I teased, barely containing my glee. The sight of her vanilla perfection unraveling was a tonic for the soul, proving once and for all that the iron grip of community regulations couldn't compete with the magnetic pull of genuine human connection. My loyal campers cheered, their laughter filled with the delightful bliss of seeing their lovable villain go down in melodramatic flames while still grasping one of her fallen pamphlets in a futile attempt to restore order. Around this freshly converted campsite, bonds formed and laughter knew no bounds. Families clustered together at picnic tables adorned with hastily set up platters, sharing appetizers while swapping stories about the eccentricities of HOA life. Luis, of course, orchestrated an impromptu barbecue, dragging the officers into a game of cornhole, while offering them refreshments served with a side of encouragement best described as a smooth operator. I marveled at how, in just a few hours, we'd transformed from mere neighbors into what felt like a clan forged in rebellion, united through the surreal magic of glamping under the stars. If the spirit of togetherness had ever been dangling out of reach, it was now fully incarnated on my driveway, crafting a united front against regulations that never understood the community's heart. Meanwhile, Karen stood incensed, blustering like a wind-up toy, desperately trying to find its off switch. "You can't do this!" she shouted, but it barely registered over the fiesta. The crowd was too enthralled in their own world. I could practically hear the gears grinding inside her head, trying to compute the unfolding absurdity, mixing jealousy with disbelief. She was losing her grip on not just the situation, but her entire self-image as a formidable HOA president. Flustered and red in the face, she glanced around, realizing she was outranked not just numerically, but emotionally by neighbors, reveling in a celebration called community. The sweet twist of fate had turned the table against her, and in a rough outline of poetic justice, it was as though every unsung rule she'd worked hard to procure had ironically been swept under the profitability of a fun summer night. As the sunset transitioned to twilight, my heart soared at the sight of newfound friendships crystallizing amid campfire smoke and guitar riffs. The whole neighborhood came together, awash in joy, while laughter sparked a fire stronger than any HOA underpinnings grasp. Officer Jenny snagged a marshmallow, grinning broadly, while playfully threatening to take homemade s'mores to go. As I caught Sandra, my elderly neighbor, sharing animated tales with the officers, I quietly sighed in triumph. It wasn't just my driveway that had thrived, it was my sense of community that had erupted into something meaningful, a force that no zoning regulation could extinguish. Perhaps this absurdly delightful evening would send ripples through the HOA, if only they could admit that the seams of jurisdiction should embrace a sprinkle of joy and a hint of rebellion. Life's too short to take HOA regulations seriously when, instead, one could capture the essence of pure cheer on their own driveway, creating a paradise that, against all odds, laughed toward the impossible.